It's time to talk about endurance training for beginners, novices, and those who care about health and longevity. I've talked a lot about the elite, and we can pull from those ideas, but today I wanted to focus on something that everybody has been asking me is, what do you do if you're not training to run your fastest mile or 5K or pushing those bounds? So we're going to go into what you need to worry about, where all the health influencers and people who seem to have an idea but really don't go astray, and what matters from both the research and a practice idea. So let's go through a couple things first before I give you exact specifics as best as I can. So first off, number one is you need to be fit enough to train in order to train. So this is one of the biggest mistakes we often make is we look at elites or what the research says and say, oh, okay, it's the optimal is zone 2 here and zone 5 here and a little bit of this zone here, and we mix them all together and we're good. Here's the problem. From a physiological standpoint, all our zones mix together when we're not in shape. When we're a novice or a beginner, there are no delineations. It's all combined, and we can see this in the physiology. If I put a novice who isn't used to exercising very much on the treadmill and very gradually ramp up their speed, they get to a fast walk and lactate has already shot up past our aerobic threshold, past our lactate threshold, all that jazz, and we're past it. Because everything is condensed and there's no nuance or delineation between zones because we're not fit enough to handle it. All the zones blend together. So what does this mean? Step one is getting fit enough to train. Sounds simple, but it's neglected. So what does this mean? Lots and lots of easy. Again, you could say zone 2, zone 1, whatever. I don't give a shit. Like, what I care about is I need you to do enough time on your feet where you can talk. I've talked about this in a previous YouTube video. But time on your feet where you can talk. It can be walking. It can be biking. It can be rucking. Anything. You just need to accumulate time. And then we need to combine that with preparing your body to actually work out. That includes some strength, flexibility, all that stuff. We'll leave that to the side as well. But in terms of endurance component, what that means is what I'd call easy strides, right? Run 100 meters, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, probably no longer, at a relaxed but faster than jog pace. And what you're doing here is you're preparing your body both from, a muscular and tissue and tendon point to be able to handle loads, and from a coordination standpoint. If you haven't run anything faster than a jog for a really long time, your kind of motor programming and your activating of muscle fibers isn't very efficient. So we've got to remind our brain and body how to do that well. So you combine these two things to get fit enough to train. Lots of short, easy strides. Now, I should be clear. These are non-fatiguing. Take as much rest as you want, right? Go lamppost to lamppost on your street and then walk for a while and then do it again. 6 to 10 of these strides is fine, okay? After you've warmed up, add on a little cool down and at the end, you're good. That program allows us to get fit enough. When are we fit enough? It's hard to give an exact delineation, but when that walk, when we can extend it out to 30, 45, even an hour, and we can do it without being out of breath, right? We can increase the pace of our walking without it causing us to jump in fatigue. At that point, that's when you transition, right? When we start adding some walk jogging in, and increase that volume. All right, so let's say we built that foundation. We don't even care about the zones. That's it. We're building a foundation. We get to the point where we're going on walks multiple times a day. our fitness is getting a little improved. We're doing our strides. Why does that work? Couple different reasons, and then we'll go into the next stage. Because if we look at aerobic adaptations, we have both central and peripheral. So central, think of it, heart beating, pumping blood, sending blood down through all your veins to your muscles. Peripheral, muscular, looking at taking that oxygen, going down to the muscle, transporting it in there, processing things, getting energy, spitting out, lactate, other things, processing with that. Anyways, the way I like to think about it is we need to build the distribution center, heart, centrally. We need to build the roads, right? Veins, pathways, blood flow, all that stuff. We need to build the trucks or the trains or the transportation that carries that. Red blood cells, carry the oxygen, get rid of other stuff. We need to build the processing centers at the muscular level, being able to exchange that stuff, oxygen, other things, process it well, and then deliver it back out. Every step along the way, we need to deliver it, central and peripheral. What sets the stage best is lots of easy, okay? As we develop it, what happens is our kink in the pipe along that pathway shifts and changes. That's when we move from complete novice to what I'd call, kind of your recreational athlete, recreational runner, recreational, exerciser, essentially. Then what do? Well, a couple different things. First off, what I would say is we look at extending our endurance before we add quality. Why? If you look at the history of training, going all the way back to the Flying Finns, Paavo Nurmi, the guys who dominated in the 1920s, what they discovered is that they created a base full of long walks, and then when they got within a couple months of the season, they started adding intensity. Some what we now call fartleks, where basically you're alternating hard and easy, some 1-off or 2-off intervals where they're doing something at race pace or pretty close to it. But it was, Nurmi believed, long walks, long easy stuff, followed by intensity, that was the key. And what happened over time, and if you look at modern training, is we refine that. So jump to Arthur Lydiard in the 1960s. What he discovered is we need a whole big block of aerobic training before we add hills and sprints and, interval training and sharpening. And it's that pattern that works. Why? Because if we look at it, what happens is the aerobic training takes a longer period of time to develop in general. So both central and peripheral. Aerobic training, and there was a recent research review that looked at the time course of this stuff. Aerobic training takes weeks, if not months, in order to get this steady incline. And I'll put the graph in here actually. If we look at high intensity interval training or sprint interval training, what happens is we get a lot of those adaptations quick, and our performance or VO2 max or whatever parameter jumps quick, but then it stagnates. Why? Because the intense stuff is the icing on the cake. It's the figuring out how to transport or offload the whatever we're carrying in our truck to the processing center quicker and more efficiently. It's not necessarily building new roads or building more efficient processing centers or increasing our processing center, number. It's minor efficiencies. That's why if we look at interval training, a lot of the adaptations that occur are on the enzymatic level. So we get better at producing our aerobic and anaerobic enzymes, which makes the process a little bit more efficient, but we're playing in the margins. And what happens is we quickly max out those margins for a short period of time and have to go away from that before we come back to it later. This is called periodization. Everybody uses it. And there was a research study about a decade ago that showed that when we follow this cycle of building aerobic to a degree base and then interval training, it works much better from a performance standpoint if we just did interval training alone, or we did interval and then endurance and flipped it around. Why? Because we got to take care of the big buckets, that take a long time before fine-tuning. So keep this process in mind. So, okay, you got the idea. We extend, then we qualify. So what does that look like? Okay. Once that foundation is built, then we start to add stimuli gradually because our zones start to separate. So that means we have more stimuli for adaptation. We have more nuance for adaptation. So we attack this from both angles of speed and endurance. On the endurance side, we start adding steady work. So instead of easy running, we add in some pickups or progression runs where we do what I call run to the barn. You go out easy, you turn around on your way back, you pick it up until you get home. This is still primarily or almost entirely aerobic, but it's pressing the high-end aerobic side of things. Why is this important? Because now we're activating not our easiest to recruit slow twitch muscle fibers, but we start activating and calling in to utilize our intermediate and even some of our fast twitch fibers to work aerobically. When we do that, then those get more efficient working aerobically, right? We get some of those processes and efficiencies that occur. We train our intermediate fibers to work better aerobically and not just for speed and power, okay? So we start working high-end aerobic. We add some progressions in. We can even look at things like threshold or tempo runs, such as 2 by 10 minutes or a 20-minute threshold at half marathon pace or the pace you could sustain for a little over an hour, right? We split things up in that regard, okay? On the flip side, what we do is we add to our speed support, right? We started that foundation by easy strides that were non-fatiguing. Now what we do is we add in what I'd call near max sprints. Generally start with hill sprints. Don't do them on the track. Hill sprints are less injury risk and recruit muscle fibers a little bit better without the risk. So what we do is we go down to a hill, again, non-fatiguing, but we build up to where we can do them near max, right? We start at maybe 800 meter pace, go to 400 meter pace, get a little bit faster, right? And we have long recovery, several minutes in between, let's say a 6 to 8 second sprint up a hill. Why are we doing this? Again, we're looking at building that speed foundation, the ability to now recruit fast twitch fibers. Our muscle fiber recruitment is dependent on the power output calling upon it. So our brain goes, oh crap, like this is a big demand. We need everything. Call into the fast twitch fibers. Just as if we were going to do some really powerful, exercise, strength or power exercise, right? We'd have to call into those fast twitch fibers. Same thing when we're looking at sprinting here. Why is that important? It develops a neural ability to recruit those fibers and the coordination. Again, this is after ample warm-up. Again, all hard workouts have to have ample warm-up. But what we do is we build, this is the extension of building the base or the foundation. Lots of easy, add in some high-end aerobic work, lots of easy but somewhat fast strides, add in a foundation. And then what we do is we add quality as we go, okay? Because at this point, now we have a base of both speed and endurance off of which to work. And we'll start to have more nuance between the paces and the intensities. What no one tells you in the exercise world, we always talk, there's 5 zones. Bullshit, there's not 5 zones. There's way more than that. Okay, every nuance of an intensity can bring a different adaptation. The problem is, for most people, they're not fit enough to understand or feel the difference between running a 64-second 400 and a 60-second 400. It all blends together physiologically. The fitter you get, the more delineation there is. So 10K pace workout is different than a 5K pace workout. So a 5-minute pace tempo is different than a 5:15 or a 5:10 pace tempo. The fitter you get, the more, we'll call it zones and intensities there are. Now let's bring it back down. You're not elite athletes, so let's not go all through all of them. But what we're looking at is now, once we've got that base and foundation, is adding in kind of the middle stuff. What does that mean? We need some stuff, we need some short intervals at anywhere from 5K down to mile-ish effort. 400s, 300s, 200s, minutes, 30 seconds, 15 seconds. How much rest? Contrary to the influencers out there, you don't want really short rest on these intervals. Why? Because that makes them more aerobic. Short rest makes them more aerobic. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's true. Why? Because your anaerobic system doesn't have time enough to recover during the short rest period. So it just becomes more aerobic, more aerobic, more aerobic, even as you fatigue. So we want longer periods. For kind of a beginner or intermediate runner, if you're doing 400s, you want at least 1-to-1, probably 2-to-1. Meaning, again, I'm going to use more advanced times, but if you run a 75-second 400, you should probably have at least 2 minutes rest at the beginning. Then you want to cut that down as you get fitter to maybe 1-to-1. 75 seconds rest, 75 seconds hard, right? That's key. Okay, what does this faster stuff start to do, especially with longer rest? Okay, it balances the equation. So it's not just aerobic performance that you worry about, it's this kind of mixed anaerobic / aerobic that we start to develop, okay, on that side. Then we look at medium length intervals. So we're looking at 800s, Ks, 1200s, even some miles. Basically anywhere between 2 and 5 minutes in length, maybe a little bit longer. In here, we're looking at anything from, we'll say 15K pace, maybe 45 minutes, what you can maintain for 45 minutes, down to close to 5K pace or around there for beginner and intermediate. Again, what are we looking for here? 1-to-1 rest to run ratio or a little bit less, right? So for example, you can work down your mile repeats 4 by 1 mile, and you can get that down to 3 minutes rest or 2:30 rest, depending on stuff. Okay. What does this help? This is like just slower than your VO2 max generally, but helps in that pushing that near max heart rate kind of area, right? Which gives us some more central adaptations, kind of boost that, and some nice peripheral adaptations in terms of oxygen utilization, mitochondria, et cetera, et cetera. And then you want that third path, which is the longer intervals or fartleks or tempos, which is extending what we built earlier through that progression stuff, those pickups, those tempos, and it's adding in more high quality aerobic work. Okay, so this is long intervals. Could be miles, could be 2Ks, could be 1.5 miles, could be 2 or 3 by 10 minutes, could be a 20-minute tempo, could be a 25-minute progression run, split it up, whatever you want to call it. Okay, here we look for generally short rest. Why? The intensity isn't as much, and we want to keep things pretty aerobic. So you might be 2 by 10 minutes with 90 seconds rest in between. The pace, again, anywhere from, I'd say, half marathon pace or a little over what you could sustain for an hour and a half, down to what you could sustain for 45, 50 minutes. A little bit faster maybe on the more advanced realm. Okay. All right. So I'm trying to keep it as simple. There are a million different options here. But what we want to do is then how do we mix this in for the person who's moving from beginner to intermediate now, who cares about fitness more than performance, although they care about performance to some degree. Here's the deal. The right mix. How many hard workouts? We just went over all these hard workouts. How many can you handle in a week? Start with 1 a week, move to 2. Any more than 2, you're probably moving towards advanced. Don't do it. Okay? Unless you're training at a high level for performance. I'm training at a decent level. I'm 40, trying to run 420 or under. Just ran a 443 mile pushing a stroller. So I'm probably in low 420 shape right now. I only do 2 hard workouts a week. That's it. Okay, so if you're doing more than that, don't. For most part, unless you're training for an event, we want to vary them up. Meaning cycle through the short, the medium, the long. How many of each depends on, again, your goal, right? If you're training for a race, there's a little bit longer, you want a little bit longer work, okay? More of the longer stuff, more of the medium stuff, spices of the short stuff, or vice versa. If you're just looking for health, fitness, vary them up and cycle them through them. Okay, you can go short, medium, long, then short, medium, long, or any combination of it is fine. If you're training for something, we want to periodize this. Again, there's that word. If we look at periodization, we started very easy. Okay, we add in some high-end aerobic with some hill sprints to get us fit enough to train. Then what we want to do, periodizing, again, depends on the race, but generally we look at adding in the shorter, faster work as more of the end sharpening. So it's the icing on the cake. Again, it's easier, even in the longer intervals or medium intervals, it's easier and takes longer to build the aerobic side. Even that high-end aerobic. So we can generally sustain that for longer than we can the shorter, faster, sharpening intervals. Okay, the other part is varying those workouts up. I gave you a bunch of hypothetical options. There is no best or magic workout at all. Norwegian, 4x4, 10 by 1 minute on and off, Tabata, Tabata's horrible workout, covered that earlier. But none of it is magic. The best thing is we want to vary the workout, alter the paces, the speeds, the recoveries based on our fitness and how we're going. Think of it as I'm going to progress things a little bit. Sometimes that means lengthening the interval. Sometimes that means adding a rep. Sometimes that means getting a little faster or decreasing the rest. All of those are at your disposal. Gradually shift the stimulus. There's lots of overlap here, okay? As you gain ability and fitness, there will be more nuance between the paces. You'll understand this. This is when you move from training, intermediate athlete to advanced, and you start looking at coaching books. The last thing I'll say on this is that we can't do this indefinitely, okay? You need to periodize for stress and recover holistically. So we're doing that on an individual basis, right? 2 hard workouts a week, varying it up. I should mention in between those 2 hard works, easy. Lots of easy runs. How easy? Honestly, it doesn't matter too much for intermediate or a beginner runner. We want time on our feet aerobically where you can talk. That's it. Sometimes it'll be a little steady if you feel good. Sometimes it'll be complete recovery after a hard run, meaning you're just jogging through it. Go by feel. How much easy? Depends on your goals and your time. But my rule of thumb is we want to build up to where we're getting 30 plus minutes for our easy runs. Ideally, probably 45 minutes. Once you get up to 60 minutes for easy run, your time to move to advanced coaching, right? But somewhere in that area, okay? As much as you can handle without getting hurt and that fits your lifestyle. But we need those easy days, okay? That's how we look at it. As I was saying before I went on that switch there, we also need to periodize overall. So you're going to have some periods where you back away from the workouts and you go back to almost what you were doing in the beginner days, meaning not just long walks, but lots of easy runs and strides. Why? Because that helps us recover, absorb, and adapt. So that often this is why athletes go through seasons, right? We build, we go through our sharpening phase and get a little more specific and faster. We peak, and then we go take some time off and then build again. Okay, generally you have to go through that period at least once or twice a year. So don't get caught in the nebulous, I'm going to do 2 hard workouts and easy days forever and ever and ever and ever. Build in some periods where you go back and rebuild the foundation. All right, I've gone in a lot of different directions. There's so much more we can get to, but people wanted to know, what do I do if I'm a beginner or moving to intermediate? It's this. Build the sustainable base, okay? Gradually add some high-end aerobic plus some, again, building the foundation doing hill sprints. Short, fast and smooth. Don't press. Okay. This isn't strain and go all out. Fast and smooth. And then get to a place you can train. Once you can train, 1 to 2 hard workouts a week. Everything else easy. Vary the hard workouts. What you prefer to do will depend on your goals and if you want to move to racing, etc., etc. But your best goal or your best thing is don't look for magic workouts. Vary the intensities. As you get fitter, you're going to notice more nuance between those intensities. That's a good thing. You're ready to move to more advanced training. So there you go. In a lot of other videos on my channel, I cover everything from Tabata sprints, workouts, optimal balance of speed and endurance, why so many influencers and health gurus get all of this completely wrong, and so much more. So if you want to go more in depth, check that out. I also have a new book out, Win the Inside Game. If you order now, you get my 100-page coaching book that outlines all of this and more and goes into detail on how to adjust and develop workouts. It's the book I created for my own use. I never was going to put it out there. Then I decided, screw it, let's give it to people. Link is in the notes, so check that out. You won't regret it. And the book, Win the Inside Game, is fabulous. My opinion. I'm biased, but it goes into the mental side of performance, both sport and life. And it'll help you perform better in whatever you're pursuing. So subscribe. Thanks for watching. Leave some comments. Tell me what I missed. Tell me what you're confused on. Tell me where I can help, because that's how I get these video ideas. Thanks, everybody. Take care.